I want you to picture two objects. The first is a wall of glass. It is strong, it is rigid, it is seemingly impenetrable. The second is a simple rubber ball. Now, imagine a powerful force. An unexpected blow strikes both of them. The glass wall, for all its strength, shatters into 1,000 pieces, unable to bend, unable to yield. The rubber ball, however, absorbs the impact. It gets compressed, it gets squeezed, it is knocked to the ground, but then it does something remarkable. It bounces back to its original shape, sometimes even bouncing higher than before. When we think about mental strength, we often mistakenly praise the qualities of the glass wall. We admire people who seem unbreakable, tough, or invincible. But the truth is, life will eventually hit all of us with a force strong enough to shatter any rigid defense. True psychological strength is not about being unbreakable. It is about being the rubber ball. This is the essence of mental resilience. Resilience is the psychological quality that allows some people to be knocked down by the adversities of life, failure, tragedy, stress, loss, and not only bounce back, but to come back stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. Life is filled with challenges. That is a non-negotiable fact. We cannot build a life that is free from adversity, but we can absolutely change our capacity to respond to it. Resilience is not a magical trait that you are either born with or you are not. It is a skill. It is a set of mindsets and behaviors that can be learned, practiced, and developed over time. Today, we are going to explore the 5 core habits of highly resilient people. These are the science-backed practices that you can begin to cultivate in your own life to build your capacity to bounce back from whatever life throws your way. The first habit of highly resilient people is that they practice realistic optimism and acceptance. This might sound like a contradiction, but it is the absolute foundation of resilience. It's a concept that was famously identified by Admiral Jim Stockdale, who survived for years as a prisoner of war. He noted that the first prisoners to die were the pure optimists, the ones who believed they'd be out by Christmas. When Christmas came and went, they died of a broken heart. He also noted that the pure pessimists, who believed they would never get out, also died. The ones who survived were the realists. They were the ones who could look at the brutal, undeniable facts of their situation and say, "This is our reality. It is terrible, and it is not likely to end soon." They accepted the harshness of their present moment without denial. And at the same time, they never lost faith that they would, eventually, prevail in the end. This is the Stockdale paradox, the ability to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be, while simultaneously retaining faith that you will prevail in the end. The non-resilient person either denies reality, "This isn't really happening," or they fall into complete despair. "This is hopeless. My life is over." The resilient person holds both truths at once. "This is a terrible situation, and I will find a way to get through it." How can you practice this? A powerful technique from psychology is called radical acceptance. This means actively acknowledging the painful facts of your situation, without judgment and without resistance. It's not about approving of the situation or being happy about it. It's about ceasing the pointless mental battle against what has already happened. You cannot solve a problem that you refuse to fully acknowledge. Acceptance is the first step not to giving up, but to moving forward. The second habit is that resilient people are masters at finding meaning in adversity. This is the core idea from the work of psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl observed that the prisoners in the concentration camps who were most likely to survive were those who could find a sense of purpose in their suffering. They had a why that allowed them to endure any how. The non-resilient person, when faced with a crisis, gets stuck in the "why me" narrative. They see themselves as a victim of a cruel and random universe, which leads to feelings of helplessness and despair. The resilient person, while still feeling the pain, instinctively begins to search for meaning. They shift their focus from "why did this happen to me?" to "what can I do with this? What can I learn from this? How can this experience make me stronger? How can I use this to help others in the future?" This isn't about pretending the suffering is good. It's about finding a purpose within the suffering. It's about transforming the narrative from one of passive victimhood to one of active survival and growth. A practical way to cultivate this skill is through an exercise called benefit finding. After you've experienced a setback or a failure, take out a journal and force yourself to write down at least 3 potential positive outcomes, lessons, or benefits that could arise from the situation, no matter how small they seem. For example, this painful breakup has taught me what I truly need in a partner. Or, losing my job has forced me to learn new skills and explore a career path I am actually passionate about. This practice retrains your brain to automatically look for the opportunity for growth hidden within every challenge. The third habit is that resilient people are expert bricoleurs, or resourceful improvisers. Bricolage is a French term that means tinkering, or making creative use of whatever materials are at hand, rather than waiting for the perfect tool. Resilient people embody this mindset. When a crisis hits, they don't get paralyzed waiting for the perfect plan or for all the resources they wish they had. They take a calm inventory of what they do have: their skills, their knowledge, their relationships, a small amount of time, a little bit of energy, and they improvise a first step. The non-resilient person often gets stuck because they focus on what they lack. Their internal monologue is, "I can't start looking for a new job because I don't have the perfect resume." Or, "I can't deal with this health issue because I don't have enough information." They are waiting for ideal conditions that may never arrive. The resilient person, the bricoleur, asks a different question. What is the one small thing I can do with the tools I have right now? They might not be able to write the perfect resume, but they can spend 15 minutes updating their LinkedIn profile. They might not have all the information about their health, but they can make one phone call to schedule a doctor's appointment. This approach of taking small, improvised actions is incredibly powerful. It shatters the feeling of helplessness. It builds momentum. And it gives you immediate feedback from the world, which you can then use to inform your next improvised step. So, practice being a bricoler. When you face an overwhelming problem, ignore the giant perfect solution. Instead, ask yourself, what is my next, smallest possible step? And then take it. The fourth habit is that resilient people actively cultivate and lean on their social support systems. There is a myth in our culture of the rugged individual who can handle anything on their own. But decades of research have shown, unequivocally, that resilience is rarely a solo journey. Our connections with others are one of the most powerful buffers we have against stress and adversity. Having a strong network of supportive relationships provides us with emotional support, people who can listen to us and validate our feelings. It provides us with practical support, people who can bring us a meal or help us with a task. And it provides us with perspective, people outside our own head who can offer advice or help us see our situation in a new light. The key here is that resilient people don't wait until they are in the middle of a crisis to build these connections. They proactively invest in their relationships when times are good. They are the person who checks in on their friends. They schedule regular calls with family. They cultivate relationships that are built on mutual trust, vulnerability, and reciprocity. The non-resilient person often does the opposite. When a crisis hits, their instinct is to withdraw, to isolate themselves, out of shame or a desire not to be a burden. This is the worst thing you can do, as it cuts you off from your greatest source of strength. Resilient people understand that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate sign of self-awareness and strength. So, invest in your relationships today so that they are there to catch you tomorrow. The fifth and final habit is that resilient people prioritize deliberate self-care and self-compassion. You cannot be a bouncing ball if you are deflated. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Resilient people understand, on a deep level, that their physical and emotional well-being is the bedrock of their ability to handle stress. They treat things like sleep, nutrition, and exercise not as optional luxuries to be indulged in when they have time, but as essential, non-negotiable maintenance for their resilience toolkit. But even more important than physical self-care is the practice of self-compassion. When we face failure or make a mistake, our default inner voice is often that of a harsh, unforgiving critic. "I can't believe you did that. You're such an idiot." This self-criticism only adds a layer of shame and guilt to the initial pain, which depletes our emotional resources and makes it harder to bounce back. The resilient person has learned to replace that inner critic with an inner compassionate coach. They treat themselves with the same kindness, understanding, and encouragement that they would offer to a good friend who was going through the same situation. A simple but powerful way to practice this is to ask yourself, what would I say to my best friend right now if they were in my shoes? You would never tell your friend they are a useless failure. You would say, "This is so hard. It's okay that you're hurting. You did the best you could, and you will get through this." The practice is to then turn those kind, supportive words inward and say them to yourself. So, let's recap the 5 habits. 1. They practice realistic optimism by accepting the brutal facts of reality. 2. They actively search for meaning and purpose within their struggles. 3. They are resourceful improvisers who take small, immediate actions. 4. They cultivate strong social support systems. And 5. They practice deliberate self-care and self-compassion. Resilience is not about avoiding the storms of life. That is impossible. It is about learning how to become a better sailor. It is not a fixed trait that some are blessed with and others are not. It is a dynamic process, a set of skills and habits that you can build day by day through conscious practice. Life will inevitably push you down. It will test you. The question is not whether you will face pressure, but how you will choose to respond. By cultivating these habits, you are not building an unbreakable wall that denies pain. You are building something far more powerful, the flexibility, the strength, and the enduring spirit of a ball that no matter how hard it hits the ground, will always find a way to bounce back.